with severe cerebral palsy who's fighting for airlines policies. More than £880 million worth of British property claimed to have been bought by Russians with suspected dirty money is to be looked at by MPs investigating economic crime in the UK. The Treasury Select Committee is looking into the scale of money laundering in Britain, following claims the UK, in particular the London property market, has become the destination of choice to launder money. It follows recent figures from an organisation that works to expose corruption, Transparency International. It estimates that £4.4 billion worth of UK properties may have been bought with suspicious wealth, with more than a fifth or £880 million worth of these purchased by Russians. Well, we can chat about this more now with Rachel Davis-Tiga from Transparency International, Vladimir Ashakov, who was a leading opponent of Vladimir Putin and anti-corruption campaigner in Russia until he was granted asylum in the UK in 2015, and Tom Keating, a financial crime expert at the defence think tank, the Royal United Services Institute. Welcome to the programme. Rachel, let's start with you. What did you find?
So we found £4.4 billion worth of property in the UK that we believe has been bought with suspicious wealth. So that's people with corruption convictions or allegations of corruption made against them. Now, it's important to note that this is just property we found from public material, publicly available material. So the real figure is
like
probably
what?
much.
Give me examples.
So, for example, court documents, the leaks from the Paradise and the Panama Papers, land registry documents, media exposés. I mean, we really do think this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, the fact is that if a corrupt individual is going to steal public funds, they need somewhere to hide it. And our research has shown again and again that the UK property is a good hiding place.
Vladimir, is all Russian money in the UK corrupt?
No, I think most money that coming from Russia to the UK is legitimate, and a lot of people who come to London to work, to resettle, are legitimate. But there are a few rotten apples, and I think now British political establishment will gather enough political will to go after it.
You say there are a few rotten apples, but a few rotten apples with a lot of money.
That's true.
Tom, all this talk about Russian money in London, why? Why Russian money?
So the UK has had a policy for 20 years of laying out the welcome mat to money from all over the world. We've had light touch regulation. David Cameron famously said that regulation elsewhere benefits the UK because people choose to come to the UK. So we've chosen over 20 years to take a 50-50 view and accept money in the UK that perhaps in hindsight we would prefer not to have done.
I mean, if there is all of this money sloshing around, apart from properties, where is it?
Artwork, football clubs. I mean, you know, it's basically trophy assets that you can invest a lot of money. It's very difficult to spend £10 million if you think about it.
Really?
So buying expensive properties, investing in football clubs, in expensive art, really is the way to do it.
You had the example of someone who wanted to try and spend £1 million in a week and they were struggling to do so.
Just buy a UK property. I mean, to someone like me, high property prices are scary. You know, I don't like that. But if you're someone who's trying to launder millions of pounds in one go, property is an attractive option because you can do that in one swipe. And the fact is, if you want to buy UK property, you can do that anonymously. All you have to do is add a layer of secrecy to your wealth by opening an anonymous company in, say, the British Virgin Islands. You buy the property in Hampstead Heath. You don't even have to tell the land registry who you really are.
OK, unexplained wealth orders have recently come in. Can you tell our viewers what they are and if they will help?
Yeah, of course. So let's say I'm a health minister and I've bought a property for £5 million, but my annual salary is £100,000. Now, then people might look at that and think that's very strange. The law enforcement can go to that health minister and say, OK, maybe that's legitimate money, so please just explain the source of your wealth to us. If the health minister is unable to do that, then law enforcement may be able to recover that property.
Vladimir, why is London so appealing to Russians?
London is really a magnet for Russians. If Russians will learn any foreign language, it's likely to be English. That comes handy in London. London is a big metropolitan city, not dissimilar to Moscow. It has a lot to offer. Russians trust British education system, British court system, so that's why there's a thriving Russian community in London.
How much corrupt money would you say is tied up in the property market here?
In absolute amounts, it may be quite large, billions, maybe tens of billions. But in terms of the total financial flows that go through British financial system, it's quite tiny. So going after this corrupt money will not really affect any, currency exchange or employment.
Yeah, can you talk about the process of that money sort of coming in? Because a lot of people may find it hard to understand how, on the one hand, we're expelling Russian diplomats in response to what's happened with the poisoning, and also, you know, we've got the rest of the world backing us, or a lot of other countries anyway, while we've got all this corrupt money in the UK in properties and with the owners of football clubs, for example.
I think it's important to visualise the money laundering superstore, right? If you want to launder money, you go to the money laundering superstore, you head straight for the aisle marked United Kingdom. So as Rachel says, we have overseas territories like the British Virgin Islands that offer secrecy, we have the rule of law, we have assets that hold their value. The UK is a tremendously attractive destination for investment, full stop. And if you want to move your assets away from your country of origin, not just Russia, plenty of other examples out there, then the UK, frankly, is the place to go.
Are there any checks in place at the various stages along the way?
There should be, in theory. Estate agents, lawyers, accountants, if they see suspicious wealth coming through, they should be telling the National Crime Agency about that. But you know, through research that we've done and others have done, we found that sometimes these checks and balances aren't always carried out, and the government needs to do more to make sure that this happens. I mean, we'll be submitting evidence to the Treasury Committee saying just that. I think also we need more transparency in our property market. You know, our government has said they're going to bring a register over who really owns so much UK property, but they made that promise in 2016 and we're still waiting for that law.
Has this affected the UK property market?
I think that's a good question. Donald Toon, who's very senior in the National Crime Agency, he's claimed that it's been raising house prices, and while we haven't done that research ourselves, we do believe that it's feeding into this wider problem of UK homes being used as empty safety deposit boxes. So I know I go past some of these homes that we've looked at night and the lights are off. There's condensation on the windows. Nobody lives there. If they do, it's for a few days a year. Now, at a time when there is a shortage of UK housing and people like me are desperate to get on the housing ladder, it's really frustrating to see we have so many empty homes in our capital city.
Finally, just a quick word from all of you on what more can be done to stop money laundering in the UK.
The issue we face in the UK is that we're not just a country of 65 million people when it comes to money laundering. We're a country of 8 billion people. We're a global financial centre. And we simply don't have the resources in place to police the size of problem that we face. So more resources and political will is what we need.
The UK has quite robust legislation against money laundering. The Bribery Act, the Proceeds of Crime Act, it just takes political will and resources to enforce it.
The UK needs to use unexplained wealth orders against corrupt money, and the UK government needs to bring in the promised property register, not just put down draft legislation, but bring